It's 20 to 1, so the lighting's gotta be just what it is. Um, mm. This is my coffee drink with whole milk, no sugar. I picked it up because I just moved that from the table to the wall, and my hands felt dusty, and I thought I needed to wash them or put on lotion or both. But I didn't want to get up, so condensation. This one keeps drinks cold, but isn't double hulled, lined. These don't condensate. Yeah. Oh, 20 to 1. Rob's making a video about tumblers. It is my favorite topic. This is alcohol. This is iced tea. What's left of it. They're cute. They're in a row. By size. I haven't been doing well, and it's, I think, been due to my back pain, but I go in and out of periods of high productivity and not. Anyway. If this ends up on Instagram stories, remember that's where you click to drop down a description when you're in IGTV, not stories, IGTV, to get clickable links. Oh God, everything is so terrible lately. Also, Jacksonville is crazy. I never know whether it's going to be hot or cold. I'm actually warm. I know there's no heat or air on, but like, it's always been a weird phenomenon here that the temperatures in a single day can vary like 40 degrees. Like, and that happens several times every winter. Jeez. Looking at dust in my house. I'm mad and I'm frustrated. That's my tripod. Those are notes for a conversation that I would love to have about anxiety and getting things done, but I haven't felt up to doing it. One of the reasons for my hesitation is that I want to talk about just a little bit about the fact that it was Trayvon Martin's birthday. And I do not have very much eloquence or intelligence right now. And my complicated thoughts tell me, don't talk about things when you don't have eloquence and intelligence. But I also think that part of me being me is I want to normalize struggles with mental illness. And one of the reasons that I have, for most of my life, felt alienated by the prevailing culture is that I feel that so much of it is fake. And one thing I talk about all the time and ad nauseum, is advertising. And I feel that, my friends who hear it are probably, would be. I cannot believe that we live in a world where the volume of insincere messages is so high, and and it's talked about so little. I cannot believe that we live in a world where there's likely way more research into how to manipulate people via ads than whether or not that is detrimental to human existence. Meaning the bulk of the research would be funded by corporate capitalism, so would be about like how to figure out how to get people to do the things versus my deep hunch or personal experience that it has this like massive effect on the way we think, the way we behave. Why am I talking about that? I told you I wasn't doing well. That's why. So, I don't know if this is going to continue to be a problem with the microphone. Maybe that'll help. Oh my God, I hate myself so much. This is like why I think it's sort of important for me to put out unedited streams, even though it seems like, well, gee, couldn't you work a little harder and, write a script and edit it together and not have it be so terrible? Well, I guess, but then wouldn't it be like everything else? Isn't this at least different? Because it was only about a year ago, I was looking through podcasts, I think, for maybe some YouTube videos for like meditation. I was looking for nourishment for my soul or spirit, words that I don't really they're not my words. But, and even when you find, so I was just looking for sincerity on various topics, and even when you find it, or do you find it? Okay, so you I'm doing my search, but I'm using, the tools that I have. So like the Google, the Apple, the YouTube. And this is one of those things, I've got notes somewhere and clips and if the thing starts out with an advertisement or a plug, that alone can be difficult for me. If it's overproduced, then I doubt its sincerity. I guess the best, it's like somewhere in the middle of a thing, of a chunk, of a media chunk, is someone talking like this, and maybe they're coaching you through breathing or whatever. But bracketed on either side of that is, hey, thank you for joining us. And I'm like, whoa. Especially because if they're going to use this to get me into this raw, soft shell crab state, I don't know, whatever, but just like I'm exposed. Well, don't come and stab me. Oh, I've got a great, oh, yes. And this one's a perfect example because it's, it's an example. There's these things I've gotten into recently that are conversations from the New York Public Library, and they take place at this kind of tone, at this level of realness, sincerity, seriousness. And I was listening to one recently, and I think it even ended with a poem, like the person says the thing, and what makes this particular example stick out is that the bookends, the framing, was clearly tacked on, a post-production thing. Just, it was a standard thing, and of course I have this recorded somewhere, but it just goes from reading something just really deep and profound, and hardly any pause at all, and then like a jingle, and somebody just talking like this and says, oh, if you want to subscribe to others, and it's really felt like this assault to me, because that's me, that's how I am. Maybe other people are better able to navigate it. I know a lot of people are really good at tuning out the garbage. I have a theory about that, though. I really don't think that it's a skill that communicating humans can become good at. So I think that if you think of yourself as really good at tuning out ads or unwanted communication interference, my hunch is that you are suffering, that the very nature of your brain going white noise, I'm not going to hear that, it's not important. I would say that probably bleeds over into your real life when you are trying to pay attention. Or at the very least, it interferes with your clarity of thought. But I just did the thing I'm least comfortable doing, which is surmising what you, an anonymous someone else, thinks. I'm only really comfortable talking about me, and this is where I would insert Jerry Blank on Strangers with Candy, that's Amy Sedaris, saying, I may not be much, but I'm all I think about. I recorded something earlier where I talked about changing the expression hurt people, to hurting people, hurt people. And believe it or not, I think that video was even worse than this one. I haven't been at my best lately. I am hurting. It is not my intention to hurt people, but I am very aware that I am operating suboptimally. And to the extent, I mean, I'm, not to whine about it, but like, for me, I'm at my threshold of functioning in pain. And it affects my thinking, and it affects my, concentration while driving, and forgetting things, and so it's part of my theorizing that when you're hurting, you aren't functioning at your best, and so you're more likely to hurt someone else. Whether intentionally or unintentionally. I like that better than hurt people, because all people have been hurt, but not all people are not constantly hurting others. I mean, maybe, but I think that would be too depressing, to think that we can't treat others well. And I feel like I'm better at it when I'm not in the midst of hurting. I feel like I'm better at everything when I'm not in the midst of hurting. None of that lengthy intro has anything directly to do well, I wanted to give sufficient time before I talked about something like the death of a 17-year-old, a violent murder of a 17-year-old. And I was not speculating as to what George Zimmerman may or may not, what hurt he may or may not be suffering. My preamble was to say that I'm not at my best. I am hurting, and I am not going to do the job I would like to do, and that is painful to me and will be a worse product because of it. And I think of all of these things as like rough drafts for the work I would like to do if I were able to. I would like to be able to talk about, to give my little talk on overcoming anxiety. I would like to do a lot more with my painting and merchandise. But I'm just not making it, and I'm not doing well. So this is the me that I have to offer. I bet you can hear that. Eating ice is a terrible habit that I have. I am not here to speculate about the hurt or hurting of murderers or white supremacists. However, there is undoubtedly hurt there. White America needs so much healing and spiritual intervention, and it's terrible. And I'm just going to say that Republicans are the white America party, and their platform is no, it's this. So, how do you help that? And yet I'm a white American. What does that mean? I have been wanting to say more about that, but there's a lot to that. So it's almost been half an hour, and my main point is that I'm hurting and I can't be eloquent. And that sucks, because I'd like to be eloquent. Today, well, yesterday now, was Trayvon Martin's, would have been 26th birthday. He died, he was killed when he was 17, and he had been 17 for like 3 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So, black young men are always are often presented as adults, or determined, labeled adults by the white power structure, the judicial system, the media. When I think of me, when I was 16 and had just turned 17, I mean, that is a kid. That is such a kid. Yeah, we're all different, but not that that matters. I mean, it matters, but it all matters, but George Floyd was an adult. Philando Castile was an adult. You know, anybody who watches maybe I can do this. I'm not able to talk well right now. Maybe I can talk about what I would talk about, what I would like to talk about in my imaginary future videos or podcasts or whatever it is I might be able to do. Earlier on Instagram, I shared a woman reading a poem, and she stated she was the same age as Trayvon. And so she's 26 now. She was 17 then. So I shared this poem and I watched it and I was deeply moved. And in it, she says things that I wouldn't say, don't believe. Kind of like earlier when I talked about soul and spirit. That's my ice machine filling up in the freezer. I don't know if you could hear that. And some liberal I follow on something, prior to during the Georgia Senate runoff elections, someone expressed a discomfort with Reverend Warnock continuing to use that title as he ran for Senate. This was some white liberal who otherwise, I don't know, I don't agree with everyone that I follow, but I probably followed, I probably mostly like stuff that this person had said. And Joe Biden sometimes will just quote the Bible or talk about his Catholic faith. I'm really hardcore non-believer. None of that bothers me. I think that when people are using their faith to care for others and accomplish good things and to use references that you know what I'm saying? Like if you quote your scripture and it's to prove a point, and that point is how you're going to help everyone, then that's good. That means that your religion is serving a good purpose in your life. But I'm usually exposed to people who quote their scriptures in order to deny other people rights. And I've never heard Biden or Pelosi or Warnock or who's the Moral Mondays guy I follow in North Carolina? Or anyway, I've never heard any of those figures or the poet that I shared. Their message isn't, you have to join us, and if you don't believe the faith that I'm preaching, you're wrong and you're hopeless and you're an outsider, and not at all. So those things don't bother me. I used to say I'm an atheist, an ardent atheist. I mean, I am an atheist. I don't believe in God. I started saying I'm a humanist because I'd rather identify by what I do believe in, which is the goodness of people and working for the dignity of all people. That's more important to me than the denial of faith in God. So the poem that I shared had, talked about, I would have loved to have done a sort of line by line reaction, but it's not my place. I mean, it's her beautiful work. But I wanted to say something about it because it's not like I've had a personality transplant and suddenly I believe in language like, life after death, or someone is looking down on, that's not how I experience the world, but I think that for those who do, that's fine. I think that there's a lot of reason to, to me that's where you meet others for the sake of connection and for compassion. It would be stupid of me to object on the most nitpicky, trivial of for those reasons, and not take in the full meaning of a poem or a statement by a politician. If they're speaking to me and they're speaking to my values, then it doesn't matter if as I heard it doesn't matter whether their values are guided by Christianity or Islam or no faith at all, or obviously there are other options. I got distracted because I was trying to remember I think it was Rashida Tlaib, who was just on the news yesterday talking about her experiences on January 6th in the House, and she said just she was telling a story. She was speaking quickly, and I just thank Allah that blah 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 blah. Well, obviously, that's not something that you normally hear U.S. politicians say, because she's, I think, one of two. But how many times have we heard anyone say, "Oh, and I thank God this," and it's no different. Like that's what I mean about, like, there are people in this country who wouldn't be able to hear her point because they would stop at that word and be and immediately otherize the statement, whereas I noted it because it isn't what I'm used to hearing on the news, and kept going to take in the fullness of the statement. So that's one of the things if I were eloquent, I would talk about the poem that I linked to earlier on Instagram, and the sentiments and the specifics in it, and how you can feel the sentiments without agreeing with all the specifics, because the specifics are not important. And also, I think it's worth noting that it's certainly not my place to critique someone's reaction to the death of her peer. I'm in a different age bracket, culture. And that's another thing I'd love to talk about, is how little white people know about the Black experience in the US, and yet how much white people want to talk about it. That kind of circles back to, I only know me and my experience, and that's what I'm comfortable talking about. So I'm describing my experience of observing these things that I've noticed recently. And the last little bit that I hate talking about, but I think is worth talking about, another part of the sickness of white culture. There are people who, because a young man who was murdered, a boy, because a just turned 17-year-old boy happened to be named Trayvon, and that's not a name to white people. It's not a name, not even a person. And that's why earlier I mentioned Philando Castile. And there are millions of white Americans who think that it's, I don't know what, some sort of natural born right to police Black names, Black language, Black bodies, Black tone of voice, Black volume of voice, black hair. Well, that's bodies. And it would seem that there are millions of white Americans who believe that death is the suitable punishment for any of those transgressions. For having a weird name, wearing their hair weird. I am not saying knowledge of the name came first. I'm not saying that there aren't people, black men, who were killed named George, Jordan. Yes. Those things happen too. But I am saying that there's an othering and a dehumanizing that goes on that is very prevalent. And I think that the majority of white people don't want to learn about black culture. They want to judge it. You know, get what they want out of it, which is like judging it. You get to be the critic, you know, and you're like, I like this song, but they shouldn't say that. Like everything that Black America is doing is for like me, for us to like consume, to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So those are some of the topics I would talk about if I had the ability to be eloquent, but I am tired and in pain. And yet I've managed to talk for 50 minutes. Which means that this is going to go on my own site. And I'll post a teaser to it on social media. And then I'll hope that nobody sees it, because I just don't think I'm smart. I don't think I'm worth listening to. But sometimes I get good feedback. And I can't listen to me because I've spent the majority of my life depressed, and many times in my life I've been suicidal, so clearly I have to not listen to me, to the negative voice. Yeah, so if I had the energy, I would do like a much better version of this, and I would edit it, and I would have clips of the poem that I'm referencing, and it wouldn't be 50 minutes long. And yet, I don't think I have the energy to do better than this. But if anyone has watched all this, and you would like to see what I could do with more energy, I could do more if I thought that this was my job. And more on that some other time. But I would love to be able to devote time to better video essays, better videos, better production, while keeping it real. But I gotta move on to the next thing. If you watched this whole thing, thank you very much. Please let me know some way. Let me know